Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today I want to go a little bit more in depth on a card that just got revealed the other day, Singularity Fiend. This card is really cool. It's a brand new hand trap to the game of Yu-Gi-Oh, which is very exciting. I think his design's also pretty cool, all things considered. It's a cool card. Doesn't really seem like it's specifically tied to any archetypes. It may be like one of those things where like maybe an evil character used him because he's a dark fiend. But I don't think he's tied to any archetype specifically. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have synergy with other cards and archetypes in the game. So real quick to refresh you on how this card works, he is a level 1 Dark Fiend, 0/0 for the stats. That matters. That's actually better than having stats in my opinion for this card specifically. Reads as follows. When your opponent special summons a monster or monsters, you can discard this card and one spell as cost to destroy that monster or monsters. So non-targeting, which is really cool. And I like that it destroys multiple. So any deck that has a really powerful play where they summon multiple monsters at the same time, this card can pop all of them at once. So it's a pretty cool card. I think it's like a better version of Ghost Ogre. There are obviously situations where Ghost Ogre hits that this card doesn't, but I do think this card's still pretty good and can hit certain choke points for sure. I think about decks that maybe have monsters they summon out, but they don't have effects that trigger on summon. It's a monster that would summon and it has just like a ignition main phase effect, and so being able to pop that card before they even get to like go into their next action and activate the effect can potentially cut them off of like really important lines. So I like that. I think the card's cool. The biggest drawback of this card, of course, is that you have to discard a spell for it. That's what we need to focus on today. I want to focus on what archetypes, what interesting cards already are out there that are good spell cards that are like a good spell card you'd want to play. I don't want to find garbage cards that are really bad except for if you put them in grave. I wanted to find cards that kind of like would already be played in archetypes anyway because they're good enough regardless to actually add value to this card in the long run. There's a bunch of things you can go into with this card. I think this card's much better going second than going first. It's one of those cards because like how many decks actually want to end with a spell in hand? They don't. Now, with this card, and that's one of those things where like maybe if you play this card, does it make you want to like make your play worse to make sure you end with a spell in hand so that this card is live in hand? Like there's just weird things that go into this card like that, but still, it's a cool card. So let's just get into it. Let's get rolling with a bunch of archetypal cards that I thought were really interesting. First, you have to look at White Woods. This is the new archetype that got revealed like the day before Singularity Fiend. I don't think that's an accident. They all of their spells and traps, but specifically their 3 spells, have this same effect. If this card is sent to the graveyard to activate a monster effect, which this counts as, you can set this card. They all have that effect. So basically, it's free in this deck. Now, the only question is, like when you go first, like that's the same thing you come back to, right? You go first, and unless you want to hold one in hand, or technically the deck does have a way to like quick fusion summon or synchro summon on the opponent's turn and like add a spell or trap from grave or add an archetypal spell from deck on the opponent's turn. But sometimes you just have better things you could be doing than going for those things. But because if you had gone through them on your turn, they're not getting added back, they're getting set back, so they're not in hand to use for Singularity. So it's a little bit weird there, but I still think there's pretty good synergy here. It's one of the better ones. This may be the single best card like to consider Singularity Fiend for. Hysteric Sign. This card is insane. If you don't know how this card works for Harpies, it says during the end phase of this card is sent to the graveyard because it was from field or hand. This turn, add up to 3 different Harpy cards. So that even means stuff like Harpy's Feather Duster. That means Harpy's Feather Storm, and then obviously monsters as well. So really, really powerful card. That's one of the best ones here. Lunalight Perfume, same thing. It's just a searcher, right? You can banish this from grave to discard a card and add a Lunalight. So cool. That works. Memento Talon Fusion. This card's able to banish self from grave to pop a monster you control and add a Memento spell or trap. Another searcher. This is a card you want to use on your turn, and that's something you need to keep in mind is like depending on what you send in these certain cards, these synergies work. But sometimes in the deck, like if every single Memento line goes through fusion now, not only do you use it to fuse, but then in grave you're also using its effect in grave to banish and search, then putting it in grave early doesn't do that much for you because your standard lines would already be going through this card, right? So that's also a little bit interesting of a dynamic to keep in mind. Eldritch is funny, right? Because like Black Awakening and whatever the other one is it the white one? They usually don't see play in Eldritch. In fact, the traps see more play, and it's one of those things where when I keep going back to this card, there's like multiple scenarios where if this card was spells or traps, it'd be significantly better, for sure. And I would actually kind of like that more, like give trap decks like a hand trap that they can use like pretty exclusively as long as some of their traps have like good graveyard effects. Like that'd be pretty spicy. Next up, Virtual World. King Long, cool. It's King Long. It's a Searcher from Grave. Same thing as like Lunalight Perfume, basically. Dark World Ascension's funny because this puts this card in Grave, which lets you start your turn going second. As like not only do you have to interrupt them with the hand trap, but then it lets you start your turn with a card that gets you a discard and adds itself back. So you have like the fusion spell, but you're also getting like guaranteed materials in Grave, and you're getting a discard outlet all in one. So this one I actually kind of like for sure. Toy Vendor, another one, right? Add any Edgent Sabers or any Fluffle monster. That's pretty good. Heavenly Dragon Circle, adding any Tinny card from deck to hand as long as you control a face-up non-effect monster. Pretty simple. Pearly, and then we get to some interesting ones, right? Because the Pearly cards don't actually search you or get you value in Grave specifically, but the deck there's 3 decks I had on here that are like very spell heavy decks. They don't technically have cards that like are searching, activating in Grave if you are to send them off of Singularity, but because Pearly has Black Cat and White Cat and you know what I mean, and abilities to like attach from Grave and stuff, it is not the biggest concern to be pitching one early, assuming you have 1 or 2 more memories in hand, right? So I think that's an interesting one, just because the deck already naturally plays so many spells. That could definitely be one that maybe is a little bit interesting as like a side deck option for Pearly. Runic obviously has to come to mind, right? This is the spell heaviest engine in Yu-Gi-Oh's history, maybe other than Striker, which will also be on this list. We'll get to them. But yeah, right, like pitching a Runic because like you feel like the hand trap opportunity is just straight up stronger than whatever that Runic card is worth to you in that moment in time, and then when you do like go to play next turn, you have an extra Runic in Grave. Not an extra, but like you have a Runic in Grave already, so like it's just fuel for the draw anyway, so it's totally fine. Tearlament Scream, not an amazing one, right? Because this one only searches traps, so that's like pretty bad, I think, overall. Like maybe in like a trap-ish build, but even then, like you're playing too many traps, you're not playing enough spells. But like ideally, like Pitch Scream. Oh no, this has to be discarded by card effect, right? Oh, by card effect. This one doesn't even work. Forget about this one. Thunder Dragon Fusion. This one's funny too. The problem with this one is it can't activate its effect in Grave the turn it's sent. So going second, it's cool because like pitching this to, hit him. Hitting, to hit them with the Singularity, and then this is in Grave, and then searches you any Thunder monster. Cool. For Sprite, Thunder Dragon, you wouldn't play some Sprite, but Thunder Dragon specifically, right? Get a starter, get an extender. That's kind of cool. I don't know. I think it's fun. But, nothing crazy, right? Because the deck isn't going to be too spell heavy anyway. And that's kind of the problem here. Like, we see some archetypes have one card, like Hysteric Sign, but they don't have, that's not, like, some of these decks just don't play over 10 spells. And if they do, how many of them actually want to be discarded? Or how many of them are, I think about, just simple situation, right? Like, Dogmatica, right? Nadir Servant. Why you never want to be discarding Nadir Servant unless you have 2 in hand. That's like the only scenario you would ever be like cool discarding Nadir, because Nadir's so powerful to activate in hand. You don't ever want to be like letting go of it from hand. You can throw Sky Striker into the same pool that Pearly and Runic kind of fall in, right? Just heavy spell decks, so the card's going to be live very often. I kind of like it in this deck also because this deck likes to opt second, which makes Singularity better more often. But again, another deck where the cards you're discarding aren't usually getting you value. It's just your engine is so good at recouping resources from Grave that like it's probably okay, and it helps you get an extra spell in Grave early so that you're some of your cards plus harder. It's still good. Mikako's interesting because, again, this is another one where I would say, like, not the most amazing effects engrave that you're getting from what you're discarding, but Mikako plays so many cards that, like, are just kind of clunky in hand. So, like, just being able to pitch Mayoashi Dori when you have it in hand, being able to pitch a Ceremony if it seems like you don't have a hand that's even going to go through Ohime, right? And some of the, or just some of the random, like, equip spell bricks that you just otherwise, like, are not great in hand. Just get them sent to grave, why not? And also, you know, make use of a good hand trap. And this, again, another deck that likes to opt second and decently heavy on spells. So I could see this one working as well. Singularity could work in this deck potentially also. So that's cool. And then Cubics, just last one I threw on there, is maybe the least relevant of all the decks we looked at here. But banish this card from grave to add a Cubic monster from deck to hand. Pretty simple. Get this card in grave. And again, Cubic's another deck that goes second. So I think synergistically it may be a little higher than some of these other ones. But still, it's Cubics. Then for some spicy stuff, Interrupted Kaiju Slumber. I like this one because you get to pick and choose what you want to do. This card can't use the graveyard effect the turn it's sent. So going second, and which is like the only scenario you'd ever even have this card in your deck, you could Singularity, pitching this card, and then banish this, obviously get a Kaiju even further. So it's like a hand trap plus a Kaiju combination, so it's a pretty good 1-2 punch going second. But also, if you had other spells that you're okay discarding, depending on what you're playing against, if you have deck knowledge on what your opponent's doing, is there a scenario where you go, you know what, I'm going to hold the Slumber. I'm going to pitch a different spell in hand. I'm still going to Singularity them, but then I'm just going to hold Slumber because I think Slumber's actually going to be insane. They're not going to have a board that's going to be able to handle Slumber. And I like having that choice, that it's valuable in hand, but also has value in grave at the same time. So you get to pick and choose. Gives you flexibility, not just like some of these cards, like the Cubic card, like some of these cards are like terrible, like not good in hand. Like King Long, not great. You know what I mean? You'd rather just be getting that in grave. Galaxy Cyclone, this is another cool like side deck option, I think. I think about stuff like Fire Kings. Now I know Singularity is not the best because it destroys, so like you'd probably have to be going after you know, like the oh my gosh, I'm blanking so hard. Why can I not remember their name? The Snake Eyes, jeez. You'd probably want to use this on some of the Snake Eye monsters, obviously, not the Fire Kings themselves. But considering every Fire King line basically goes through Fire King Island, being able to pitch this card and then use its graveyard effect to pop Fire King Island, which is basically a Raigeki, already like baits some good portions of your opponent's like setup out already. So I like that. And again, like a card that does have value in hand if your opponent does have set cards, but also in grave as well. Dracoback. So this is one where like I don't think Dracoback specifically is an amazing card, but I do think like specifically going first, right, with an adventure-based deck, which already plays 5 or 6 spells if you play the Foolish Burial. But it's always an assisting engine. It's never the main engine in a deck, so you could easily still have multiple other, you know what I mean, cards that let you make use of that let you that still have like spells and engine cards like that, which is really cool. But I think this deck is cool because it gets you this card for free. Oh, you know what? I think I'm a little bit... No. Am I going crazy? No, I think it equips from deck, so I actually do think this is bad. But I was thinking, like, you get this card for free. Maybe it's a little more interesting for, like, Whitewoods. Oh, no, but you have to use their normal... It's bad. This one's bad. I kind of jumped on this one a little too quick. Metal Flows Fusion, pretty basic. I mean, this is one we were already kind of looking at with, like, Whitewoods, and we were just like, do you just play 1 or 2 Metal Flows Fusions? Because why not, right? Just send it and redraw. Right, and we're already talking about how Whitewoods has synergy here. Like, do you just end up playing both of those in the same deck with Singularity? Like, that could be kind of cool. Basic card. And the last one I'm going to throw out there is Nightmare Throne, because as much as the other stuff has synergy with, like, that card activating, I do think Yubel / you could almost throw synergy in with the Sacred Beast stuff as well, because I believe they both have ways of, like, getting value from 0 attack and defense fiends, right? This card just straight up adds 1, so the field spell for Yubel can straight up just search this card as a hand trap. If you like kind of have everything else, you're like, you know what, let's have a backup plan. Let's make sure we set up Singularity in hand also. As well as the fact that like the Sacred Beast spell reborns any 0/0 fiend, so it can just reborn him if need be. Squirmer can reborn him. Now, reborning him doesn't do much. I don't know off the top of my head if they have ways to add him back, add a 0/0 fiend back to hand. Then it gets really cool, because then you're talking about, like, you know, Sunlight Wolf type, you know, Salamangrate stuff, where, you know, you're able to add back a synergistic hand trap turn after turn and keep abusing it. But still, just something to keep in mind. I think this card, I think it's cool, and I think even if it's not even great in the deck, is there a world where you play one of it for scenarios where, like, you can search it out? If the deck feels like it plays enough spells, that's always going to be the question. And it doesn't have the best, like, spell synergy, where, like, they're great in Grave or anything, but just something to keep in mind there. I think that it's also searchable. Anyway, so. Yeah, it's a cool card in overall, and maybe the problem is we don't have the perfect deck for it yet. Maybe we'll get another deck where, you know, spells are insane in Grave, and like they consistently end with spells in hand, so this card's even okay going first as just like a straight up extra interruption, but obviously doing its main thing going second. So. Those are the ideas I found. I'm totally open. I mean, there's so many spells out there. I had, you know, the best I could do is just skim and try to find what I could see and try to bring that to you guys. But if you have any other ideas of decks that you think could make really good use of this card, please throw them in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear it. I still think this card is really interesting. After further speculation, I'm a little less bullish on it. I think it's cool, and I think it could work in very specific decks, but yeah, the fact that it's just spells is a little bit tough. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. I'd love to hear them. I'll keep you posted. No news today, but, you know, we got a good amount of news this week, but, like, there's still plenty more coming in the next, like, 2 or 3 weeks. So stay tuned for that. I will bring you anything there. So subscribe for more on that stuff, and let me know your thoughts on the Singularity Fiend. I'll see you next one. Peace.